Sharpening. I am your host, Josh Peck. Today we're going to do something a little different. We don't have a guest for this episode. I haven't done one of these in a while. I think the last time I did an episode without a guest was probably when my book Quantum Creation first came out, and I did an almost 4-hour episode on that book. Well, now that my book Cherubim Chariots is out, I promise we're not going to do a 4-hour episode on that. But I did want to dedicate an episode to some research that came about after the writing of Cherubim Chariots. And some of this research is in the book, as well as Quantum Creation. But I wanted to talk about something that something I've been calling the coming Technocalypse. Basically, it's what do scientific advancements, and especially in the field of physics and quantum physics and all that, what does that have to do with prophecy and the apocalypse? What does it have to do with the Book of Revelation and Daniel and all these different prophetic books of the Bible that we look to? And I think that there really is a lot there. I think that the things that people are looking into now, fascinating as it is, I think it's heading down a dangerous path. Especially considering the scientifically prophesied year of singularity in 2045, which, for those who aren't familiar, you can just go to 2045.com and look that up. But it has to do with things like artificial intelligence, and basically when our advancements in scientific discoveries reach such a point that we can't predict what's going to happen after that. And there are even more recent predictions that say that might come even earlier than 2045. So we'll have to wait and see. But when we look at our modern technology, we can't help but to wonder where it's headed. Scientific discoveries that are made today, it'll become normal and lead to commonplace devices tomorrow. Just look at the iPhone 6. Can you imagine something like that in the 80s or the 70s? And that wasn't even that long ago. But even technology is progressing at such a rate that things are becoming outdated faster and faster and faster because they're getting replaced with even better things. So when we think about the devices of the future, what might those look like? Where is all this headed? Where will they lead humanity? And can we trust in our own human innovations to save us, or in believing that, are we already doomed? And I'll say too that some of this information is coming from a blog series that I wrote called the Coming Technocalypse. There's 3 parts to it. You can go to joshpeckdisclosure.blogspot.com to look at those, and I'll probably be referencing another blog that I just wrote recently later on in the show. So as we move through those, I'll mention what the blogs are and give reminders on where you can find it. And also, if you're interested in the books, you can go to ministudyministry.com, or you can go to skywatchtv.com. Right now, they're having a package deal for both books for, I believe, $29.95. So that's a pretty good deal. I also have a link for that up on my website, and that website again is ministudyministry.com. That's ministry.com. All right, so getting back to it, science and technology, they're really heading into unknown realms, and even the ones in charge, admittedly, don't understand the full consequences of their research, and yet, they still continue, and they'll even admit that they really have no idea what they're doing, and because of that, they're on this ultimate quest for discovery. No one's going to stand in their way, and in a strange way, we as Christians might even be able to understand that passion. At least to a certain extent. We're on the quest of the Great Commission. And nothing, whether torture or death, or nothing's going to stand in our way of preaching the gospel of Jesus Christ to the world. Well, so our mission is brought forth by Jesus, or set forth by Jesus, excuse me, for the betterment of mankind and eternal salvation of their souls. So that's where the difference really is. The goals of innovation outside of God are the physical betterment of mankind, and that betterment is determined by man himself. The extension of physical life with no regard to the human soul and the spirit is at the top of the list. So, at times we can benefit from these innovations. I'm recording this podcast on a computer, and I can utilize the internet to send that out to anybody who's willing to listen. But other times there are moral dilemmas that comes up. So, we ask ourselves, where's the line? And instead of allowing mankind to define the line for us, we really should allow God. Simply speaking, things just don't things seem to work better that way if we just let God define the line. Now that might mean we can't do everything we might want to do, but the reward and security is more than worth it. And besides, he died for us. It's the least we can do is listen to what he has to say. So in this part of the episode, I want to look at a couple different innovations that are being researched. So while we're going through this, you can ask yourself, is this technology crossing the line? Would God approve? And if not, what can we do about it? As of now, I believe the best thing we can do is be informed and prepared to give an answer if asked. And of course, be right with God. Have our hope in Jesus Christ. So it really helps if we understand the origins of technology, and I'll actually read an excerpt from my book, Cherubim Chariots. This is from chapter 2. There is a common tradition that teaches the serpent of the Garden of Eden was the one responsible for the development of ancient and modern technology. This view stems from certain verses in the 3rd chapter of the book of Genesis. Genesis 3:17, and unto Adam he said, because thou hast hearkened unto the voice of thy wife, and hast eaten of the tree of which I commanded thee, saying, thou shalt not eat of it. Cursed is the ground for thy sake, in sorrow shalt thou eat of it all the days of thy life. Thorns also and thistles shall it bring forth to thee, and thou shalt eat the herb of the field, and in the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground, for out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and unto dust thou shalt return. So that is Genesis 3:17 through 19. And then we can also read Genesis 3:23, which says, therefore the Lord God sent him forth from the Garden of Eden to till the ground from whence he was taken. All right, so back to the excerpt from my book. The common interpretation of verse 19, specifically where it says, in the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, is that Adam would now have to work to prepare his own food. No longer would it be readily available as it was in the Garden of Eden. If Adam wanted bread, he would now have to make it himself. Also, verse 23 states that they had to till the ground. Since tilling ground requires tools and innovation, and since the serpent was the one who tempted them into this position, it is commonly believed that the development of technology resulted from the influence of the serpent. All right, so that is the excerpt from my book. Again, that's chapter 2 of Cherubim Chariots. So that's where we first see technology and innovation and things like that. Now, that doesn't mean that technology is inherently evil or anything like that. Again, like I mentioned, I'm using technology now to record this podcast. But knowing its origins can help us decide nowadays where the line is, and that's really the question that we want to ask ourselves. So there are those that will state the LHC at CERN, which is the Large Hadron Collider at CERN, can almost be looked at as a giant interdimensional portal. In fact, back in 2010, it was reported Guido Tonelli, spokesman for one of the CERN specialist teams monitoring operations in the vast subterranean LHC, said probing for extra dimensions besides length, breadth, height, and time would become easier as the energy of the proton collision in it is increased in 2011. So that was back in 2010. That's already out of date, but they were already talking about increasing it, which they did, and now they're doing it again. They're increasing it, and I would assume that's going to keep happening. They're going to keep increasing the power till something happens. So at the time of this podcast, the recording of this, they just powered up the LHC, and we're still kind of waiting to see what's going to happen. One of the many goals at CERN is the discovery of extra spatial and or temporal dimensions. In fact, the CERN press office actually states, as far as we know, we live in 4 dimensions, 3 of space and 1 of time, but experimentalists at the Large Hadron Collider are looking for evidence that the universe contains more than that. The existence of extra dimensions could explain some puzzling properties of the universe. So the fact is, whether the intentions behind these experiments are malevolent or benevolent, humanity simply just doesn't have enough information to properly calculate the consequences of these experiments. Such is the same with emerging technologies such as quantum computing. Quantum computing relies on things like superposition and quantum entanglement to operate. And actually, to help explain that, I can read an excerpt from my book, Quantum Creation. I'm not sure what chapter this is from, but here's the excerpt. Another thing about photons is their ability to seemingly communicate with each other by means of something at an instant. Einstein called this spooky action at a distance, yet we would recognize it today as quantum entanglement. Somehow, by means that are not yet understood, photons seem to be able to communicate vast distances at faster than light speeds. This, of course, would seem to be theoretically impossible. It is no wonder Einstein was not a fan of this idea of quantum entanglement. However, by various means, it has shown to be true. Regardless of how far away they are from each other, photons seem to be able to communicate with each other instantaneously. To this day, how exactly this works is a complete mystery. So again, that's an excerpt from Quantum Creation. So we see an example of mankind attempting to utilize something that they don't fully understand. From my own personal opinion, and keeping in mind I'm not a physicist, so you can take it for what it's worth, the only way something like quantum entanglement can be possible is if it's a phenomena operating in higher spatial dimensions. For example, imagine a two-dimensional universe called Flatland. Those familiar with my work have heard this example probably more times than you can count. But if I, as a three-dimensional being, speaking, only of spatial dimensions here, if I were to stick my finger into Flatland, a Flatlander would only see a line appear before him, and through inspection he'd be able to determine that it's a circle. However, this is just a single two-dimensional slice of my actual finger. Now imagine if I were to stick 2 fingers into Flatland. The Flatlander would have no way of knowing that the 2 circles he now sees are parts of the same higher dimensional object. He would assume they are similar, possibly even the same type, but yet separate. So we can use that Flatland example to help visualize higher dimensions, and I go into all that in my book, Quantum Creation. If we see 2 three-dimensional spheres before us, we might assume that they're similar, yet separate. However, we might be mistaken because these spheres could just be three-dimensional slices of an object made of 4 spatial dimensions or even more. So that might help explain something as strange as quantum entanglement. If the entangled particles are actually just 3-dimensional slices of a single higher dimensional object, we would not have 2 separate particles exchanging information. We would have 2 slices of the same object receiving information at an instant. Now, if there's any validity to that view at all, and I admit that's a very big if, then we really don't know what we're dealing with. We can't comprehend the entire higher dimensional structure that would make quantum entanglement possible. We have no idea what the consequences of trying to use entangled particles for the purposes of computing really are. It's even been admitted recently that the basic building blocks of quantum computing are highly unstable, and yet we continue in our own pursuits. We may very well be delving and probing into higher dimensions than our own. So similar ignorance, and when I say ignorance, I don't mean stupid. I just mean uninformed. But we see a similar ignorance that's found in research of particle teleportation, or it's sometimes called quantum teleportation. A definition, according to Wikipedia, is as follows. So this is from Wikipedia. Quantum teleportation is a process by which quantum information, e.g. the exact state of an atom or photon, can be transmitted exactly in principle from one location to another, with the help of classical communication and previously shared quantum entanglement between the sending and receiving locations. So here we see the utilization of quantum entanglement repeated. The most important thing for us to realize is these things are no longer confined to the realm of science fiction. They actually are a reality. Last year, in 2014, it was reported by CNET. Physicists at the Kavli Institute of Nanoscience, part of the Delft University of Technology in the Netherlands, report that they sent quantum data concerning the spin state of an electron to another electron about 10 feet away. Quantum teleportation has been recorded in the past, but the results in this study have an unprecedented replication rate of 100% at the current distance, the team said. Thanks to the strange properties of entanglement, this allows for that data, only quantum data, not classical information like messages or even simple bits, to be teleported seemingly faster than the speed of light. Proving Einstein wrong about the purview and completeness of quantum mechanics is not just an academic boasting contest. Proving the existence of entanglement and teleportation and getting experiments to work efficiently in larger systems and at greater distances holds the key to translating quantum mechanics to practical applications like quantum computing. For instance, quantum computers could utilize that speed to unlock a whole new generation of unprecedented computing power. So the main point with all this that we've been looking at is that there are emerging technologies being developed with little to no regard to the consequences. Should anything go wrong, we are the ones that will have to suffer those consequences. And with the whole 2045 singularity event rapidly approaching, I believe it's the responsibility of each and every one of us to look into these things and to prepare accordingly. The information is available. There's no need to take my word for it. We all have the responsibility to move from the uninformed to the informed. But the good news is that you don't have to have a doctorate or be an absolute genius to understand these things. If you strip away the scientific terminology, the concepts are available to the level of intelligence of the general population, and I am absolutely putting myself in that category. So I'm not trying to sit here and sound smart or anything. I'm very much a layman myself. So we're not required to adhere or really even listen to what the world tells us. Romans 12:2 says, and be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that ye may prove what is that good and acceptable and perfect will of God. So that's our that's our responsibility, and I know these things can be hard to get our minds around sometimes. So I'm hoping that an episode like this can help, and my books and my blogs and um, all that stuff. So those are three emerging technologies, but there are also three discoveries that I wanted to look at that are closer to becoming a reality than what the general public might realize, and these discoveries could lead to unimaginable, potentially dangerous technological advances. Uh, we as we discussed earlier, we have a responsibility to be aware of these things so we can prepare. Hosea 4:6 reads, My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. Because thou hast rejected knowledge, I will also reject thee. So the knowledge is out there. It's accessible. We have access to it. We can understand the concepts. We just need to, we just need to strip away all the technical language that they'll try to use and just look at the concepts themselves. One type of discovery that could be on our horizon, it's in the field of renewable energy sources. One of these sources is known as zero-point energy, which that term's often used for it, but it's a bit of a misnomer. It might be more accurate to say vacuum energy. Um, well, for example, Wikipedia explains zero-point energy like this. Zero-point energy, also called quantum vacuum zero-point energy, is the lowest possible energy that a quantum mechanical physical system may have. It is the energy of its ground state. All quantum mechanical systems undergo fluctuations even in their ground state and have an associated zero-point energy, a consequence of their wave-like nature. So I'm sure, I'm sure at first listen, that can sound convoluted and confusing. I know I had to read over that a few times to get what it was saying, but basically what it's saying is the smallest amount of energy possible for things on a quantum level, which is the smallest of the small. That's its zero-point energy. So smallest amount of energy that's possible for any quantum thing. That's what that term is. So because things on a quantum level behave as waves, the energy increases and decreases. Those are the fluctuations. The place it decreases the most is its ground state, or zero-point energy. So zero-point energy in and of itself is really just an attribute of the quantum world, but vacuum energy is something that might actually be able to be utilized in the future. Wikipedia defines vacuum energy like this. Vacuum energy is the zero-point energy of all the fields in space, which in the Standard Model includes the electromagnetic field, other gauge fields, fermionic fields, and the Higgs field. It is the energy of the vacuum, which in quantum field theory is defined not as empty space, but as the ground state of the fields. In cosmology, the vacuum energy is one possible explanation for the cosmological constant. A related term is zero-point field, which is the lowest energy state of a particular field. So again, we kind of have a convoluted and confusing definition. This is a simpler and more effective definition. Vacuum energy is an underlying background energy that exists in space throughout the entire universe. One contribution to the vacuum energy may be from virtual particles, which are thought to be particle pairs that blink into existence and then annihilate in a time span too short to observe. They are expected to do this everywhere throughout the universe. So there's much that is unknown about vacuum energy, possibly more than any other theory that is seriously studied by physicists and other scientists. There actually was an attempt in the past to predict the zero point of vacuum energy, but based on actual measurements of the vacuum energy density, it turns out that the prediction was off by over 100 magnitudes. So now that's known as the vacuum catastrophe, and it's even been described as the worst theoretical prediction in the history of physics. So that really goes to show that we don't know what we're doing. And it's it's relatively simple for scientists and physicists to be off in their predictions. So scientists are showing interest in studying vacuum energy further. That may lead to more discoveries and technological applications. It's actually recently been reported by Business Insider that vacuum energy may lead to the discovery of the graviton, which we'll get into more a little bit later. But as of now, that's a theoretical particle that has to do with gravity, and the elusive theory of everything. Business Insider writes, it may be possible to draw energy from a vacuum using gravity, a theoretical physicist says. If researchers succeed in showing that this can happen, it could prove the long postulated existence of the graviton, the particle of gravity, and perhaps bring scientists one step closer to developing a theory of everything that can explain how the universe works from its smallest to largest scales. The new research specifically found that it might be possible to show that gravitons do exist by using superconducting plates to measure a phenomenon with the esoteric name of the gravitational Casimir effect. The most exciting thing about these results is that they can be tested with current technology, study author James Quach, a theoretical physicist at the University of Tokyo, told Live Science. So with so much unknown about vacuum energy, it's difficult to pin down exactly what, if anything, can be utilized from its discovery. If the most optimistic theories are correct, vacuum energy could provide the world with an infinite, clean, and incredibly powerful source of energy. But the question is, what would mankind do with that kind of power? The vast amount of energy potential available is only one aspect of that whole thing. The other aspect is the discoveries that would come from the utilization and study of vacuum energy. If scientists are able to observe gravitons and prove their existence, that would greatly and exponentially increase their knowledge of how gravity works, not only on a macro scale, but on a quantum scale as well. And that's one of the biggest mysteries in physics today. So that means they would be one very large step closer to learning how to overcome gravitational effects. And it's not outside of the realm of possibility that type of discovery could lead to weapons technology far more advanced than we can imagine in a relatively short amount of time. So another thing to think about, along with vacuum energy and gravitons, along with those two possible discoveries on the horizon, is the discovery of the theory of everything, which is the theory of everything. It's an attempt to combine the four forces. You have electromagnetic force, a strong nuclear, weak nuclear, and gravity. So far, they've been able to put three of the four, just not gravity, but they've been able to put the other three forces into mathematical construct that works. They just don't know how gravity fits in there. So if they're able to discover how to merge quantum field theory with general relativity, that's really what we're talking about. The implications are almost unpredictable. There's really just no limit to what could be done at that point. So again, for more on quantum physics from a biblical perspective, you can check out my books, Quantum Creation, Cherubim Chariots, ministudyministry.com. So these discoveries, they would be so powerful that they very well could lead to the coming singularity predicted to occur in 2045. This is an eventuality we really all should be aware of and prepare for accordingly. Along the path of the certainty of time, we are all headed into a strange world indeed. So those are three discoveries that we should, or potential discoveries, I should say, that we really should all keep our eyes on. Now, what's really interesting is there have been a lot of recent events. About a couple weeks ago, 10 days ago, a couple weeks ago. There were a lot of events that brought up a lot of questions about CERN and the Large Hadron Collider, and actually I think it was March 24th, the Large Hadron Collider was put on hold due to what was reported as a short circuit in the wiring of one of the vital magnets. And this isn't the first time something like this happened. The LHC has had problems before, but what confused a lot of people and had some people thinking was that at that around that same time, on the same day at least, there was an apparent coincidental crash of a German Airbus killing 150 people, roughly 130 miles from CERN. It was reported the Airbus A320, operated by German wings of a budget subsidiary of Lufthansa, was less than an hour from landing in Dusseldorf on a flight from Barcelona when it unexpectedly went into a rapid descent. The pilots sent out no distress call and had lost radio contact with their control center, France's aviation authority said, deepening the mystery. Now, certainly all of our prayers should be with the families of those who lost their lives in that tragedy. Now, whether there's a direct connection or not to the incident at CERN, that hasn't been proven. But the vast amount of information available does make the possibility interesting. I mean, there's reports now that say that the co-pilot or the pilot may have been a Muslim extremist or something. So, it's something to keep your eye on. So I don't know if there was a direct relationship with that crash in CERN or not. If you want some really good information and some ideas and theories about CERN, you can check out Gans Shimura is doing this CERN Watch video thing on his YouTube channel, which is Face Like the Sun. And really, he's got a lot of great videos. You should check him out. He's a good friend of mine, and I really like his research, and he's posting new videos every day. So after you subscribe to my channel, you should go and subscribe to his. But anyway, the people in charge at CERN, they've discovered faulty mechanisms within the LHC, and they decided that they were going to keep it shut down for repairs for a while. And at that time, it was reported engineers had been expected to start on Wednesday pumping proton beams in opposite directions all the way around the 27-kilometer or 17-mile underground tubes in the LHC closed down for the past 2 years for a refit. That would have been the prelude to the start of particle collisions in late May at twice the power of those in the LHC's first run from 2010 to 2013. The smashing together of particles inside the LHC is designed to mimic conditions just after the Big Bang at the dawn of the universe. In a breakthrough in 2012, CERN scientists announced the discovery of a new subatomic particle, a basic building block of the universe, which appeared to be the boson imagined and named half a century earlier by theoretical physicist Peter Higgs. So since its discovery in 2012, the Higgs boson or God particle that's inspired a lot of questions. Now, by itself, the Higgs boson, it's interesting, but there's nothing necessarily mysterious or ominous about it just by itself. Simply, it's a particle that determines mass. That's really all it is. And I have a short video on my blog. This would be the coming Technocalypse Part 3. I have a video on my blog that explains the Higgs boson. Now there are physicists who will put their own interpretation of the meanings of the Higgs boson that really should give us pause. And this goes back to what I've talked about in quantum creation about knowing the difference between observation and interpretation. The Higgs boson has been discovered. That's the observation. Now the meaning that's attached to that observation, that's the interpretation of the observer. And I have a video of physicist Michio Kaku, and he takes a lot of liberties to add his own interpretation of the discovery. And if you look at this thing, listen to this thing, again, that's on my blog, joshpeckdisclosure.blogspot.com, and it's the coming Technocalypse Part 3. Check out this video. he takes liberties. He adds his own interpretations, and it's really almost to the point of CERN, LHC, Higgs boson worship. Um, I mean, almost to the point of saying that it's bigger than God. So that and it's unfortunate. I like Michio Kaku. I like his research. I've read some of his books, and but that's not good. um, so there are other scientists that they're not as excited about the discovery of the Higgs boson. Stephen Hawking is one who fears a possible Higgs boson doomsday, and another one, theoretical physicist Joseph Licken. He has a couple of presentations on YouTube. You should check them out. They're really interesting if you're into this kind of stuff. He has one about the Higgs boson doomsday scenario that's really interesting, and he also has one on neutrinos that that's something that I just geek out to. So I might be alone in that, but it's really cool. But anyway, he went on record to say. This calculation concerning the Higgs boson tells you that many tens of billions of years from now there will be a catastrophe. It may be in the universe we live in is inherently unstable, and at some point billions of years from now it's all going to get wiped out. Now, what frightens scientists such as Hawking and Licken is the possibility of a quantum fluctuation creating a bubble that expands through space at the speed of light and essentially destroys the entire universe. Licken also said, most likely it will take 10 to the 100 years, or 1 followed by 100 zeros for this to happen. So probably you shouldn't sell your house and you should continue to pay your taxes. On the other hand, it may already have happened and the bubble might be on its way here now, and you won't know because it's going at the speed of light. So there's not going to be any warning. Now, of course, we, as Bible-believing Christians, we don't have to fear that. Just frankly speaking, we know what the end looks like, and it doesn't look like that. That does show us, however, how powerful of a thing physicists are experimenting with, and those experiments are done with little to no knowledge concerning the consequences or, even possible disasters of their actions. So this whole Higgs boson doomsday, it's the Higgs field, when a particle interacts with the Higgs field, which the Higgs field is all throughout the universe, it's everywhere. When particles interact with it, that's what determines it. That's what gives it mass. That interaction is what gives it mass. So photons, which are massless, don't interact with it at all. But other other particles of mass, the more that they interact, the heavier they are. So really the idea, and I'm trying to remember from when I watched Joseph Licken's presentation, which again is fascinating. You should check it out. But the idea is that the energy of the Higgs field is seemingly unstable or volatile, or it's between, like, it's something that's so exact that even just a little quantum fluctuation, which quantum fluctuations happen all the time, but if it just happened, I guess, in just the right way, even somewhere out in the universe, it would kick on the energy of the Higgs field and make it stronger. I guess there's something with the Higgs field where it almost wants to exist at a stronger energy. So if that were to happen, everything everything within the field that's switched on, or that's additional energy, would become heavier. He even described it as, like, if you were able to see it, if you saw the the fluctuation bubble, like, coming at you, the wall of it coming at you, once it hit you, your atoms could get so dense that you would just collapse into a black hole instantly. So that's the kind of thing that they're looking at. But again, we don't have to fear that. like I said before, we know what the end looks like. It doesn't look like that. So, but it does really go to show you how powerful this stuff is. I mean, something like that. I don't know if there's anything that could be done if somebody wanted to like make that happen. I don't know if a quantum fluctuation could be produced that would create that type of effect. And really, I don't know if anybody knows for sure, but that's the kind that that's the kind of power that's behind this stuff. So there are things that we should be aware of and prepare for, but they're not things that should shake our faith. One major possible upcoming discovery is that of parallel universes through experiments planned with the Large Hadron Collider. Now, physicists involved with or having special knowledge pertaining to CERN, they'll use the term parallel universes. They admitted that they're actually talking about realities in higher dimensions. So they're kind of it's almost like they're changing the definition of the terms now. One author of the study went on record to say, normally when people think of the multiverse, they think of the many worlds interpretation of quantum mechanics, where every possibility is actualized. This cannot be tested, and so it is a philosophy and not a science. This is not what we mean by parallel universes. What we mean is real universes in extra dimensions, as gravity can flow out of our universe into the extra dimensions. Such a model can be tested by the detection of mini black holes at the LHC. We have calculated the energy at which we expect to detect these mini black holes in gravity's rainbow, a new theory. If we do detect many black holes at this energy, then we will know that both gravity's rainbow and extra dimensions are correct. So, as I've said in my book, Quantum Creation, whatever scientific discoveries are made, we should use them to strengthen our faith, not shake it. This is why knowing how to separate observation from interpretation is so important nowadays. We need to know how to provide an answer to these things that glorifies God instead of doubting Him. So even in the most extreme cases, if parallel universes are found, and regardless how they want to redefine the term, when I say parallel universes, I mean parallel universes. I don't mean higher dimensions. Those are two totally different things. I don't know why they're trying to confuse the terms now. I'm a little annoyed by that, but but that's just a pet peeve of mine. But anyway. We could use that discovery to show what we believed for thousands of years. If they actually find evidence of higher dimensions, there's a spiritual existence, and in a very biblical way, it's synonymous with extra dimensional existence that they're searching for. And again, I talk about that in both my books, Quantum Creation and Cherubim Chariots. So terms like parallel universes and extra dimensions, they don't need to frighten us. We have the ability to understand these things without needing a master's degree or, intensive lifelong study or anything like that. And also, even if they were able to discover parallel universes, such as described in the Many Worlds interpretation, and again, when I say parallel universes, that's what I mean. It wouldn't negate anything biblically. Instead, it would shout even louder to the glory of God's creation. It would just be a discovery showing that God's creation is a lot bigger than we thought it was to begin with. And how many times has that happened in history? Plenty. So I actually have an excerpt here from Quantum Creation that gets a little bit into the multiple world interpretation and how, if such a thing were ever discovered to be true, how we as Christians should react to that. So here's the excerpt. On the surface, there are some theological problems with this theory that make most Christians dismiss it as a ridiculous fantasy. Questions come up, for example, like, if there are infinite versions of myself out there, wouldn't that mean there are some universes where I have never and will never accept Jesus as my Savior? And if every time I make a choice, a parallel version of myself is making the opposite choice, doesn't that negate free will, as well as many others? I believe these are very valid questions that deserve an answer, but I do not believe these questions alone are grounds to dismiss the many worlds theory completely. I will state up front that I do not believe there are multiple versions of ourselves out there, and I will explain why briefly a bit later. First, let's imagine hypothetically that one day in the future it is proven there are, in fact, parallel universes and they do contain multiple versions of ourselves. Should this be enough to shake our faith? Does this type of conclusion negate God completely? Of course not. It would only prove that God's creation is far more complex than we originally thought. To briefly answer the two questions from the beginning of the previous paragraph, yes, it would probably mean there are other versions of ourselves that are not saved, but this would be on a purely biological level. We have to remember these parallel universes would still be constrained to 3 dimensions of space. The other you might look and sound like you, but they would still have a separate spirit and soul that is unshared. This also answers the question of free will. It does not negate your personal free will because you still have the choice to do whatever you want, even if the other you chooses something different. They would be doing so completely independent of you and you completely independent of them. This type of theory is nothing that should make us question our faith in God or knowledge of His creation. So that's the excerpt. Again, it's important for us to look into these things ourselves so we can provide an answer for the rest of the church and the world, especially given the times that are upon us. We're venturing into uncharted territories, and we owe it to ourselves and God to remain informed so we can prepare for what's ahead. Now, the reason that I don't really have a reason just beyond, I guess, lack of evidence to not believe in multiple worlds. Certainly, there's nothing theological that I can see really being a problem. And I know some have asked, well, if would there be parallel versions of Jesus? And no, it would still be one Jesus, but he can, he could be in one, more than one place at one time and still only suffer one death for all of mankind. So I don't really see that as necessarily a theological issue, though I know some do, and I understand that. But where now if they were to say, is there a parallel universe where Jesus didn't die for us? I would say no. But I also don't believe that if there are parallel universes, I don't believe that there would be an infinite number of them. And the reason for that is I have a hard time believing in the idea of infinite outside of God, because if there were an infinite number of universes, parallel universes, well, we're a part of that. We would be a part of that. So what percent of infinity could we be? 1% of infinity is still infinity. 0.0000001% of infinity is still in infinity. Our universe isn't infinite, yet. So how could we be a piece of something that is infinite without being infinite ourselves? I guess that's what I'm getting at. It doesn't fit. So if there are multiple universes, I believe that, and I believe that it's possible. I like I said, I don't really have a reason just beyond lack of evidence, I guess, to not believe it, but I'm at least open to the idea. I believe it's possible. I also say in the book I don't believe that the other universes would necessarily even have to be inhabited by anything. But for more information on that, you can just get my book, or you could listen to that episode of the Sharpening I did on quantum creation. I'm sure I've talked about it in there. But okay, so getting back off my tangent here, gravitons. This is something that I was looking into before, and we touched on it already in the show. But what I want to do is I really want to get into this idea of gravitons, because if this discovery is made, it really opens some kind of scary doors. So the gravitons, it's probably one of the strangest theoretical particles ever hypothesized. I should say one that's taken seriously and could actually be true. They a while ago, there was a theoretical particle called the tachyon, which I mean, it's not a real thing. They already disproved it, but they thought, well, what if there is a particle that does go faster than light, and they called this theoretical particle a tachyon, and then they figured, well, if it's going faster than light, it would have to be traveling backward in time, and that led to all sorts of problems. So, but anyway, of anything that actually might be true, and most likely is. Graviton's probably the strangest. Gravitons, they've never been directly observed, but physicists are confident in a soon discovery by means of particle colliders like the Large Hadron Collider at CERN that we've been talking about. Gravitons are thought to be the particle responsible for gravity, and gravity in itself is still a mystery in many respects, but due to scientific advancements, we might not be far off from the holy grail of physics, which would be definitive proof that the graviton actually exists. Because, like we talked about before, that leads into a lot of different things, like the theory of everything. Now, what makes the graviton especially interesting is its apparent ability to flow free between dimensions. So what that means is, if that theory is correct, gravity can travel to higher dimensions, and higher dimensions can affect gravity. And I actually did a blog post called "The Possible Extra-Dimensional Explanation of Dark Matter." If you're interested in that kind of stuff, you should check that out. Again, I'm not a physicist or scientist. It's just some of my ideas, just some possibilities, I guess. Take it for what it's worth. But I don't know. I think it's interesting. But anyway, so among other potential discoveries, the graviton is at the top of the LHC's to-do list. The idea is it's not always to look for the graviton itself, but to look for a gap where particles should be after a collision. So basically, there are two particle detectors at of the LHC. They're called a CMS and Atlas, and they're able to show the aftermath of a particle collision. So when two when they fire off two particles and they collide, they send out this spray of exotic particles, and all this this stuff, this quantum stuff, and those detectors are able to look at the collision, and when that spray is shot out, it's pretty uniform. It's all over the place. So the idea is to look for a gap that might show where particles should have escaped, or should be able to be seen, but to look for a gap where they may have gone into extra dimensions. So that would be evidence that that they've escaped into a higher dimension, and that could lead to the discovery of the graviton. So there's an idea, and this is what I really want to get at, is that there's an idea that gravitons can be used as a way to communicate with beings of higher dimensions. Now that probably sounds like stuff of science fiction, like the movie Interstellar or something, but physicists today are seriously considering that possibility. If you go to my blog, joshpeckdisclosure.blogspot.com, I have a blog called Scientific Communication with Extra-Dimensional Beings, and in there I have a link to a documentary that was hosted by physicist Brian Greene. Really, that whole documentary is really interesting. You should watch the whole thing. But the clip that I have, it starts at 33 minutes 16 seconds and it ends around 35 minutes 11 seconds, but where they're actually talking about using gravitons to communicate with extra-dimensional beings. So they're actually seriously considering this. So if gravitons are discovered and are used as a way to communicate with beings of higher dimensions or parallel universes, that might be the thing that tells us that we're not alone. There's a lot of people that are waiting for a type of disclosure event in which otherworldly beings or supposed extraterrestrials will present themselves in their spacecraft to humanity. We might be surprised to find out that the beings presenting themselves are doing so in a different way. That might begin with established communications with gravitons. So where does that all lead prophetically? What what will the world look like after interdimensional communication is established? And we may have the answer in the book of Revelation, Revelation 9:1-3. This is one of the most fascinating passages. I've always been really intrigued uh, by uh, by this section of Revelation. Um, but all right, starting in verse 1. And the fifth angel sounded, and I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit. And he opened the bottomless pit, and there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit. And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth, and unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power. All right, so the first thing to notice there is that this is when the fifth angel sounds. I talked about this in Quantum Creation and Cherubim Chariots. There are times that numbers in the Bible can mean different things, and I explore the possibility of the number of the cherubim faces in Ezekiel's vision representing spatial dimensions in my book Cherubim Chariots. So if we included time, it's correct to say that we are four-dimensional beings, 3 dimensions of space and 1 of time, 3 spatial, 1 temporal. So if we follow that logic, we might have a reference to a being of an extra dimension in the 5th trumpet of Revelation, 4 of space and 1 of time, equaling 5. Now, I've theorized that when the rebellious angels fell from heaven, they may have fallen to what we would call the 4th spatial dimension. And I have more on that in Quantum Creation. But now I don't believe that the angel sounding the trumpet is a fallen angel at all, but might be signaling that a fallen angel is about to come into the picture. So the rest of the first verse of Revelation 9 states, "And I saw a star fall from heaven unto the earth, and to him was given the key of the bottomless pit." So this is no ordinary star. According to our classification, if a star were to fall and hit the earth, it would just destroy the earth. There wouldn't be anything left. So that there does seem to be a connection between in the Bible. There does seem to be a connection between stars and angels. There are times that the word star can actually represent an angel. We see that alluded to in Revelation 1:20, which states, "The mystery of the 7 stars, which thou sawest in my right hand, and the 7 golden candlesticks. The 7 stars are the angels of the 7 churches." And I know that there's a debate whether they were actual angels, like what we would recognize as angels, or if they were just the church leaders of those specific churches. But regardless, it makes a connection between stars and angels. And there are other places in prophecy as well that talk about that. So we can see that the star in this verse in Revelation 9, it's a being of some sort, because it says, "Unto him was given the key." So for the star to be referred to as a him, it shows that it's a person of some sort, if we can use that word. Now, I believe this is a person or being of 4 spatial dimensions rather than 3, and it's most likely referring to a fallen angel. So verse 2 tells us that the angel opened the bottomless pit with the key. And the word key comes from the Greek word kleos, and can be used as a metaphor for authority. In a sense, this fallen angel was given permission to open the bottomless pit. We also learn in Revelation 1:18 that Jesus Christ himself held the keys of death and hell. So most likely it was Jesus who granted this authority. So we might ask, why would Jesus do that? Why would he give permission for a fallen angel to open the bottomless pit? And we actually find the answer in chapter 2 of the book of Joel. That's where it talks about the Locust army, the Joel 2 army. It says, "A day of darkness and of gloominess, a day of clouds and thick darkness, as the morning spread upon the mountains, a great people and a strong. There hath not been ever the like, neither shall be any more after it, even to the years of many generation." And it goes on and on. You can read it yourself. It's Joel 2, verses 2 through 11. But verse 11, it says, "And the Lord shall utter his voice before his army." So this this army, this locust army thing that seems to be made of fallen angels, or maybe returned Nephilim, or something. It does use the word mighty men a lot, which in the Hebrew sometimes Gibor, which Gibborim, which can sometimes mean things like Nephilim and things like that. But there's a lot more things that we can learn that passage. But really, for our purposes here, we only need to note a couple of things. Um, Really, that army in Joel 2 is described in many of the same ways as the locust army of Revelation 9, and I believe it's the same. We also read in verse 8 that they have immortality, because it says, "When they fall upon the sword, they shall not be wounded." So that's kind of why I lean towards these are fallen angels here. So it's showing that they're likely angelic in nature. And given the description of the circumstances surrounding these beings, in that passage, it talks about the sun and moon and stars darkened, the clouds of thick darkness, things like that. That it seems to be the very same locust beings from Revelation 9. But again, Joel 2:11 says that this is the Lord's army. So how can this be? There are times in the Bible that God will use the enemy for His own purposes, and after all, He's ultimately in control of these things anyway. He can use them as He sees fit. Book of Exodus, we read that God hardened Pharaoh's heart. That's in Exodus 9:12. We also read later in Revelation chapter 9. The sixth angel sounded, and I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel which had the trumpet, "Loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates." And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. So, as we see, there are times that the Lord will use the enemy to fulfill His own purposes, and it's usually in the way of judgment. And I don't believe that the locust army is any different. So before they're unleashed into our world, the gravitational communication aspect becomes more obvious when we consider these prophecies. It's possible that the LHC at CERN will detect evidence of gravitons, which in turn could lead to a communication device to higher dimensional entities. So after all, what particle but the graviton would best represent fallen angels? We even have reference to falling, an effect caused by gravity, in the description of the star/angel that opens the bottomless pit. He says that he saw a star falling. So there might be a little clue there. So back to the locusts in the bottomless pit. I believe that it's entirely possible that these locusts are the direct antithesis of the cherubim Ezekiel saw in chapter 1 of the book of Ezekiel. Now, as I pointed out in earlier things, for everything that God has, Satan has an evil and inferior duplicate. Satan has never had an original thought of his own, so he borrows from God. And when we look closely at the description of these locusts and compare it to Ezekiel's vision, we see that they are complete opposites. I believe the locust army is comprised of fallen cherubim. They are most likely described as locusts because of the destructive role that they play, not necessarily because of their physical appearance. And actually, their physical appearance is described in verse 7 of Revelation 9, which says, "And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle." So if the whole locust thing was describing what it looked like physically, then we have two different descriptions really in the same sentence. So I think when it says locust, it's not saying that it looks like a locust. I think that it's referring to the job or the purpose that these things have, much like locusts, to destroy and all that. So as I talk about this in Cherubim Chariots, the cherubim seem to be an amalgamation of human and animal appearances. Other cultures have witnessed these things as well, I believe firsthand. We have the Lamassu and Shadu of ancient Assyria, and those beings were described as having an animal body, such as a bull or a lion, with wings and a human head. Now, Ezekiel's vision of the cherubim, we get an opposite description. Ezekiel describes animal heads on top of human-like winged bodies. We also see in Ezekiel's vision that one of the faces is described as being half human, half lion, which is bisected vertically. But in Revelation 9 it says, this is verses 7 and 8, the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle, and their heads were as it were crowns like gold, and their faces were as the faces of men, and they had hair as the hair of women, and their teeth was the teeth of lions. So if they had faces of men, yet teeth of lions, that would suggest a half human, half lion face, only bisected horizontally instead of vertically. So again, we have a complete antithesis. It seems like the ones that Ezekiel saw, they're humanoid-ish. They have human-type bodies, they have wings, but they have animal heads. The fallen cherubim, the cherubim of the enemy, it's completely reversed. It's an animal body and a human head, and they still have wings. So again, even the bisection of the face between the man and the lion, it's reversed. It's horizontal instead of vertical. So we have a complete antithesis of the heavenly things of God. So Ezekiel described the heavenly cherubim as carrying the throne of God on top of them. Revelation 9:11 says. Revelation 9:11. It says, "And they had a king over them, which is the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in the Hebrew tongue is Abaddon, but in the Greek tongue hath his name Apollyon." So that word "over," where it says, "and they had a king over them," it comes from the Greek epi, which can also mean upon, as well as can be a statement of authority. So there are times that the Bible uses the word epi to describe something physical, something physically on top of something else without regard to authoritative position. Like in the Gospels, when Satan brought Jesus up and put him on the pinnacle of the temple, it uses that word epi to tell that Jesus was physically on top of the temple. So that where are we at? So in Ezekiel, the cherubim were carrying God physically on top of them. So much how like the heavenly cherubim were carrying God over them, I believe that these fallen cherubim are actually carrying their king Apollyon on top of them. So I don't, when it says that they had a king over them, I believe that actually is literal. So this Apollyon, the angel of the bottomless pit, seems to have his own chariot made of fallen cherubim, and it's a total perversion of God's holy chariot. So as I point out in Cherubim Chariots, I believe that the ancient world actually did have direct contact with fallen cherubim, though again they called them things like Lamassu and Shadu and things like that. And I believe that the book of Revelation is prophesying a return of these fallen creatures. And I also believe if interdimensional contact is made through use of gravitons, it'll be either these fallen cherubim or the king that's over them that humanity will be in contact with. So given that, we will see a modern day repeat of the Tower of Babel and a fulfillment of Zechariah 5. And again, for more information on all that, check out Cherubim Chariots, ministry.com. But it's exceedingly important. Again, I guess that's the overall message of this show. We got to keep informed as to what's happening in the world. We'll need to provide answers if and when these things take place, but it's even better to inform people beforehand. We might not be believed at first. We as Christians should be used to that. But when these things do take place, they can help legitimize our claims. I'm doing this show now, and I wrote a blog about it, which I'm sure to like a non-Christian coming across this, it probably sounds totally out there and completely insane. But now, what if this actually happens? Then they might think, oh well, he was right about that. Maybe he's right about Jesus too. So it's good to have talks about this stuff and consider possibility. And that's all it's really, it's a possible interpretation. I'm not saying that it's exactly going to play out like this, but it's a possibility. But we also know that we do not need to fear if we have security in Jesus Christ, and that's really the most important thing, is being secure in Jesus. So we know that no matter what happens, whether we're here or not, when these things come on the earth, even if we die, we're still safe, because God has us in His hands, and we can't be removed from that. Yeah, I guess that's pretty much the show. I guess like I said before, the most important thing is be right with God, and let Him lead in all things. You don't have to take my word for any of this stuff. You should do your own research as well, and keep in the Word every day. But yeah, so I guess I guess that's really it. It's easy to close out these shows when I have a guest, but when I don't have a guest, I never quite know how to do it. So I guess I'll give you the links and we can be done. If you want to find more episodes of the Sharpening, you can do so again. Ministudyministry.com, and my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/Josh Peck Disclosure. Now, if you care to help support Mini Study Ministry, you can do that at ministudyministry.com, and your donations go to the everyday running of Mini Study Ministry and help bring more episodes of The Sharpening, as well as more books and other materials. But I will say, anytime I bring up donations, I have to make sure to mention this. Please only donate if you feel God leading you to do so. If you're not sure, or if you don't feel led, you can always pray for us, and we can always use more prayer. We're not 501c3, so your donations are not tax deductible, and I'll never be the kind of person that's going to promise you extra blessings from God, or a miraculous tenfold return on your money, or anything like that. We're not in the business of making promises for God. What I can promise you is that your help, be it prayer or financial, it is greatly appreciated. It keeps us going, and it's the only reason that we're able to continue doing what we're doing. So now that we got that out of the way, I guess we're all out of time. So I want to thank you for tuning into The Sharpening. I am your host, Josh. Oh, and I do want to mention we have some really exciting episodes of The Sharpening in the future. So subscribe to the YouTube channel, and go to ministudyministry.com and sign up for the newsletter. We just started doing that. I write them all myself, so I'll never spam you or anything like that. It'll keep you up to date on what's going on with the ministry, or new episodes of The Sharpening, new blog posts, books, all that kind of stuff. And I'm trying to take a more personal approach in writing them, so it'll kind of be like a personal email written to you from me. That's kind of how I'm writing them. So I don't know if newsletter is exactly the right word, but that's what we're going with. So sign up for that. And I'm sure in the future I'll put promotions, and I'll have some special deals and things like that. But so you can sign up for that, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you have any questions or concerns, feel free to email me, Josh Peck joshpeckdisclosure@gmail.com. You can get a hold of me on Facebook. I have a link on the website for that. I'm really active on Facebook. So also you can join the Sharpening Facebook group, and I have links to that for that on the website too. So again, all that being said, we are all out of time. Thank you again for tuning in. I am your host, Josh Peck, and as always, take care and God bless.